Okay. So we do this by getting really close to one another. No, we have to
I'm on the
share.
same pillow.
Yep, you have to share a pillow.
Sex positive culture.
It's my body to give.
Are threesome gifts a thing?
Taking a bra off.
I like your bed.
Horizontal.
Horizontal.
This is Horizontal with Lila.
I'm Lila, and I'm horizontal in Bushwick with Madison Young.
I am Madison Young, and I am horizontal with Lila.
You say it so nice.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome to a special edition of Horizontal, the podcast that takes you into my bed and lets your ears watch as I unzip intimate conversations. Horizontal aims to dispel shame, diminish loneliness, and cultivate human connection. This conversation was recorded last week at Hacienda Villa, the intentional community and center for sex education in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and also my home. In this episode, I lie down with Madison Young. Madison is a performance artist, an author, a sex educator, and a feminist pornographer. Last week, Hacienda Studio, our event space, hosted 3 performances of Madison Young's one-woman show, Reveal All, Fear Nothing. It is literally like nothing else I've ever seen. Reveal All demystifies, illuminates, and celebrates these often misunderstood worlds, kink, porn, BDSM, through the words and the body of an insider. It is important work. It needs to be seen, and it needs to be seen by you. I don't want to reveal too much for her, because you should really watch her reveal it yourself. But I must tell you this. I haven't even seen my own G-spot yet, but I've seen Madison's. Did you even know that was possible? You could say, quite accurately, that I was moved in so many ways. Throughout the night, I laughed, I danced, I gasped, my heart hurt. I ran upstairs during intermission and gave my date a blowjob. I cheered, and I was left with this liquid pool of gratitude at the astonishing generosity with which Madison has crafted this piece. She made us a gift. Go enjoy it. Madison will be performing this weekend in a 2-night-only limited engagement at the Tank in Midtown Manhattan on Friday the 8th and Saturday the 9th of June. Make it your mission to be there. You can get your tickets on revealallfearnothing.com. There is radical sexual healing to be had, merely by being a witness to this work. In the first half of our episode together, we talk about Madison's memoir titled Daddy, Saturations, Rainbow Unicorn Bondage, Self-Aftercare, How a Porn Star Prepares, and the petition that stopped young Madison from going to church. And now you get to do something that legions of fans have only dreamed of. You get to come lie down with us. It's like your show. It makes me wiggle. I was really like undulating and wiggling in my seat, and then I was wiggling against the shoulder of my date. I was gonna call him my lover. I'm just not sure what he is at this point. But I was just like wiggling. He started wiggling. We were really feeling it.
Oh, that's great. That's how art should be.
Yes, it should make you move.
Absolutely. It should be a visceral experience.
And yours was more so than most, I think.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Close, intimate theater has always been my favorite. And new work, always been my favorite. Would you read me a little passage from your memoir, Daddy?
Oh, I would love to. Why don't we start with a preface that I have, and it's called With Your Consent.
Ooh.
With your consent, I will take you on a journey. We will journey together, giving and taking, experiencing pain and pleasure, you as the reader, I as the read. I lay my heart bare, simple, raw, beating, human and emotional with truth, honesty and vulnerability, fear and heroism. I offer you myself, a piece of me, not all of me, a slice to connect with, to touch, to feel. I cannot hear the consenting yes seep from your lips, but by the simple turn of this page, you will be physically consenting to this journey, to this scene between you and I. I feel your eyes upon my words. Consider carefully the risks, the beauty, the parts of your psyche that you will be allowing me into, the energy that you will be sharing with me as you clutch these pages in your damp, sweaty hands and go further, exploring your depths and mine. Know that this is a carefully constructed container in which you and I are equals. We play different roles and have different histories written on our hearts, but in the construction of this, here, in these negotiations of consent, we are equals. If in reading things get too intense, if you want to slow down, if you need to dog-ear my pages and get a drink of water, do so. Listen to your body. We will pace ourselves as we explore our edges. If you need to use a safe word, do so. Close the book, leave the room, go for a walk, and breathe deeply. I will not take offense. Instead, I will respect you even more for knowing yourself, for communicating your needs and meeting them. I give of myself in these pages with trust, honesty, intimacy, and respect. I write because I am a writer. I speak because too many are silent. I make space for human error because we are flesh and blood. With love, we grow. You like that?
I do. Makes me tingly.
I can't wait to hear what you think of the rest of the book.
It reminds me of that part of your show where you say that when you created a scene in a porn, you thought so generously, I felt, I'm not just having sex with my co-star, I'm having sex with everyone who will ever see this video. And you seemed to take delight in it. It seemed to be a beautiful manifestation of your sexual gift to the world.
Absolutely. I see the camera and even this microphone. I mean, it's, a conduit. It's this pipeline of energy, of our voice, of our body, of our sexuality that goes out into the world and touches other people. They have these experiences then that, sometimes they write me about, sometimes I hear about years later.
Yes.
But it's brilliant. I mean, it's a catalyst for all of these other sexual revelations happening in other people and wonderful sexual energy.
I love hearing about couples who listen to Horizontal together. There was somebody who said it's led to many lovely conversations and conversations afterwards. I wonder, is there a passage that you would like to hear? Has anybody read your book to you?
Well, I did this workshop once where I was constructing this scene, and I had the demo bottom reading the book as they were being spanked. So I have experienced that a little bit, but only in that particular scene, yes.
Well, I would love to read a little bit of it for you if
I
you had.
I would love that. Yes. Let's see.
It's
what
always
would be a
been one of my favorite things to do since I was a little girl, was to read aloud. That I think led to my theatrical interest in training, and still just reading aloud, taking a new work. Oh, that's my tummy. Oh, I guess I'm hungry. Taking a new work and pulling it off the page and giving it manifestation is still probably the greatest deliciousness that I have in being an interpreter of other people's words.
Let's see.
Once I participated in what we decided would be called a saturation, because we wanted an alternative to a gangbang. A gangbang is great for the people who desire a gangbang, and we wanted multiple bodies focused on giving our body sensation. And so a sensation play extravaganza. And we decided that this was called a saturation. Morel and I, who's
like
the first episode of the podcast, who I believe you met. She was there the other night at your talk back. And so she developed this saturation idea as just a wish, a desire for her birthday a couple of years ago. And I attended. She created a menu of all of the things that she was open to receiving that night from anybody who was involved, because it was a very curated group. And she wrote it as a menu. So she wrote appetizers and entrees and desserts. And we had an array, a plethora of tools and instruments that we could use on her. And she's somebody who studies language and teaches language. And so one of the things that she desired that I immediately honed in on was to be read to. But she didn't provide any books on the table. So I went upstairs and I got a book she had given me. She'd given me Pussy by Mama Gina, or Regina Thomaschauer. And I brought it downstairs, and I think I read her the wrong part of the book because I hadn't read it yet. Since I have read it, I've actually listened to it twice while I was on the road. I listened to it back to back. It's the only thing that I did that with. And I wound up reading her sort of like the glossary. and it's written in such, if you dive in at that point, it's written in such a silly way that it can be hard to grasp around or to be turned on by. And so, however, it did bring a lot of laughter, and laughter was a sensation that she could experience that maybe you wouldn't think of as sensation play.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe that wouldn't be that. I don't think it was in my idea of what sensation play is. I was thinking, oh, well, it's more serious and sensual and surprising and hard and fast and light and fun, but not like funny. And this was really funny to us. And so she was just with the blindfold on, lying down, receiving touch from all these people and massages and creams and pinwheels, and then she was just laughing at the ridiculousness of this glossary.
I love that. There have been a few times that I've masturbated publicly while reading things that are really not erotic at all, like the book How to Get Things Done and masturbating. Yes. Which I think is super sexy to like read the phone book.
Right.
And masturbate, or, make it sexy.
It reminds me of two things. It reminds me of an acting exercise I did when I was freshman year in college at Tisch at NYU, where we were doing animal work. And the animal I'd chosen was a lioness. And the lioness that I observed, and we went to the zoo, we were supposed to observe your animal live. So I went to the zoo and I observed this lioness and her pride, her actual pride, not the pride of lions, but like her proudness and her regality. And I brought that in, and I was kind of shunned by the other animals, or they didn't treat me well. And so I had this emotional response where I started to break down. And then she said, okay, now we had text memorized. We didn't know what we were going to do with the text.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to break down, she's like, now text. And so I said the text, and it was, I don't remember what the text was. It might have been from a John Patrick Shanley play. But I was working through that text with such heartbreak because that's what was there. And she said at the end, you could have been reading the phone book and we would have felt the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yes.
And then it reminds me of hysterical literature. Did you ever do one of those with Clayton
No.
Cubitt? Stoya did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way that I actually know Stoya's work is from that and from her essay Coming Out Like a Porn Star
Right.
about her grandma and taking the diminutive of her grandma's name and using it as her porn name and coming out to her about that, about multiple things, and then being like, and also I'm using your name. And her hysterical literature is, do you know it?
Yes, the video I've seen.
Yeah, so the project of sitting at a table and the woman's instructed to wear something that she feels sexy in but is clothed,
Mm-hmm.
and you can only see above the desk, and she's instructed to read something that's meaningful to her. I don't think any of them, I think I watched all of them because I really liked it. I don't think any of them chose anything erotic to read.
Uh-huh.
It was just something that was meaningful to them. And then there's somebody under, an assistant under the table with a Hitachi magic wand with the instruction, which I saw you had in your show. I've never used one.
Oh my gosh, what?
I know.
You should do it right now.
I should do it right now.
Is there one around?
He has everything, but he might have it with him. I don't know.
Oh my goodness. Well, I wish I had brought mine now. I have it over at Andrew's. Oh my goodness. We've got to fix that.
Okay. I don't usually like vibration because I find it to be too much. So I've never found a vibrator that I felt like was the right amount of.
Well, it's a lot, definitely. However, with the Hitachi, you can even do it over clothes. And sometimes people even put a pillow there to buffer some
between
as well.
the Hitachi and the pussy.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really good idea for me.
For just starting out.
And then I could hump it.
Mm-hmm.
I could hump the pillow.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a
Yeah.
great idea. I've never
Yes.
thought of that before. Thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely. And you don't have to put it directly on the clitoris. You
Sure.
can put it around, just even like above. Like I like to stimulate my G-spot externally with the Hitachi right above the mons, and then go to the side of the labia. Like, because if you put it all in one spot for too long, you like burn your pussy.
It's not pleasurable.
Yeah, you get like a blister from so much friction.
Definitely. Yes. Oh, and I really like pressure on the pubic mound, I realized. And not a lot of lovers do that.
I love that too. I love when the heel of the hand is
Yeah.
there. Oh, I love that.
It feels so good,
It
so
does.
comforting, and so sexy at the same
Yes.
time. And it's a nice broad stimulus, broad pressure. The only time I've ever been able to have multiple orgasms, one right after the other, was in continuing to stimulate very slowly by doing that heel of the hand pressure down on the pubic mound, and then kind of working my ways very, very slowly back to being able to touch my clitoris again. So the hysterical literature, just for those who don't know, so the person under the table with the Hitachi magic wand instructed to distract the reader. And the reader makes an earnest attempt to read whatever they're reading because it's meaningful to them. So they want to make an attempt to read it until the pleasure is just too much and it takes them over and they must orgasm.
Yes.
Did you do that when you were reading aloud?
I don't think that I tried to refrain at all.
So it wasn't a practice of resistance.
No, it wasn't so much of resistance. I mean, it was a while ago. Let me think.
Are they
I was
available?
reading it. I was trying to make the words heard and to project it out. And then eventually it becomes so intense. You see it in the body and you see it in the face. And then it becomes part of the using the words.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes,
God,
right.
get things done, just like that.
Yes, the rigor of it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find a passage for me?
I think so. Let's see. Where shall you begin? Perhaps
Anywhere
maybe you can
like.
You can just grab a spot anywhere in here. Probably, yeah, maybe somewhere in here.
I'm going to start here because it caught my eye.
Sure. Sounds good.
Throughout the room pulses a current I love. The deep exchange of power, sensation, and energy that exposes vulnerability, trust, and fearless presence in the moment. I have just a few minutes to get ready. I place Daddy's rope bag on the outer parameter of the suspension rig, untie my dress, allowing the silky fabric to fall to my feet, and fold it and place it beside the rope bag alongside my heels. It is all a part of the scene. My service and psychological submission to Daddy has begun before he is even present in the room. I kneel down, legs spread, and expose a tuft of red pubic hair, and pink, glistening wet cunt. Then fold my arms behind my back. Face forward, eyes twinkling, staring past a sea of onlookers. A childlike grin on my face, I wait with great anticipation for my daddy. Daddy approaches me from behind and slams his hands down hard against my back, nearly taking my breath away. I let out a deep moan, surrendering to his touch, and exhale in pleasure. Daddy steps in front of me and grinds my face into his pants. I can feel his cock harden. Then he gently kicks my cunt with his bare foot. Up, slut. I stand up into attention, though I am weak in the knees from a long day. We only have 20 minutes left to play, so I'm going to make this quick and dirty. Is that all right with you, little girl? Yes, Daddy. That sounds perfect. Thank you, Daddy. I close my eyes and smile with sheer joy at having 20 minutes of play all to ourselves. He quickly wraps his ropes around me like an extension of his body, holding me close. His hands and ropes grasping my breasts, pushing into my ribs, squeezing the air from my body as Daddy tightens the ropes and hoists me off of the ground. He secures the ropes around my thighs to the overhead point in the suspension structure, relieving some of the pressure from my ribs, and I am able to move around in the ropes in the air, exploring the spots of greatest tension and shifting my weight to those spots until the tension is released. I take in a breath and exhale when the touch of Daddy's hand comes down strong on my ass and thighs. Breathe. In and out. Breathe. I trust my Daddy. He is here to guide me to my physical limits and will take care of me when he brings me back down to solid footing. Daddy lets go of the rope and steps away, allowing my suspended body to spin a compact aerial pirouette. I relax, releasing the building tension in my body and surrendering to the volition of the dance. The momentum propels my body forward, and I feel completely in the moment and connected to Daddy. Once the ropes and my body come to a stop, Daddy swings me toward him, pulling me into him by my nipples. I smile in ecstasy. "Push me higher, Daddy! Higher!" I exclaim, melting into James. We walk back to the hotel in the crisp, cold night, just before 11 p.m. The rain has stopped, and as we walk, I catch a scent of tree leaves on the wet wind. The smell conjures a blissful memory. My father and I raking leaves when I was a child in Ohio. Orange, yellow, golden, and brown by autumn. The leaves would pile up in and around the tree swing that my dad built for me. A sturdy piece of 2x4 suspended from the tree by thick, scratchy ropes to hang on to as Dad pushed me higher and higher. Dad would rake the fallen leaves around my swing and around the tree. Then we would dive into the enormous pile of crunch and color.
That was excellent. You did a very nice job of reading that for the very first time.
Thank you. $100,000 worth of training.
Right? I've been training for this for a long time.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm a fall baby as well, so that's really meaningful. Every time fall comes back around, I feel at home in a way, and this sort of melancholy that I like, that's tasty.
When is your birthday?
October 16th.
Okay, I'm September 20th.
Oh, close. Very
Yeah.
close.
Virgo, you're Libra, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I love that in that little passage you speak about something that I find to be the most beautiful part of BDSM, which is the aftercare. And knowing, like, having embedded in the experience the future experience of the aftercare.
Yeah. The scene doesn't end when the ropes come off. What kind of aftercare do you like?
I like water, and one of my favorite sensations is very, very, very light fingertips, and that is extremely soothing to me. It also reminds me of my childhood when I used to ask for it on my back to go to sleep, and cuddling, and then just like smooth, warm, enveloping palms and chests and arms.
I like that too. And water is definitely a nice bit of aftercare. I like that. And I like my hair being kind of stroked.
Oh, there's a Brazilian word, I'm half Brazilian, just for affection that is done on the head. It's called cafuné.
Aww. Cafuné.
So isn't it great that they have a word for it so you can specifically ask for it instead of just saying, like, could you stroke my hair? Could you, like, massage my scalp? Could you, and then you can, of course, get more specific about it. But if you ask for cafuné, they know exactly what you mean.
Wow, that's nice. I might have to use that.
Yes, absolutely. Cafuné. I did a scene just out here, and it was only my second time being suspended. And it was at our Unicorns and Rainbows party that we threw here, which was so fun.
Quite magical.
I wish you were there.
Yeah,
I wish you were there.
Too.
And so I was wearing a unicorn horn, a long silver unicorn horn, and I was caught. I was the unicorn who was caught in the rainbow rope, and it caught in a jumping sort of like a leaping horse position with my hands like the hooves. And when we rehearsed it in the basement because there are hard points in the basement. And we got to a point, and I suppose we spent a couple of hours, and it was with Oz. I suppose we spent a couple of hours prepping it and checking in and making, and I can communicate very clearly about just the discomfort that I am willing to handle and the discomfort that is not ideal, and we got it to a really good point. I've also held lots of uncomfortable positions as an actor, so right. I'm like, well, there's a certain amount.
Great training.
Yeah, a certain amount that I can handle, and it felt good and it looked good. But then when we performed out here on the terrace, and I, being inexperienced with rope, didn't recognize that if you're on a hard point that's in a ceiling, that's one thing. But if you are hanging from a strap that's not directly on a hard point, that's swinging of its own, it's a different thing. And so when he put me in the rope, also there was a lot of commotion, right? There's like 100 people around at this play party. We're entertaining. And of course, there's the show adrenaline that you get, which usually means you're less aware of your limits because you've got the adrenaline pumping through your veins. And he tied me, and it wasn't as, there were points that were painful in a way that didn't feel super sustainable. But yet I have the conditioning in me from being an actor from 7 years old that's like, the show must go on.
Right.
And so, you know, he didn't do all of the things that we did. He tied the unicorn horn. He tied my ponytail when we rehearsed it. He did like all these little ties that were adorable. We didn't do that, but we did manage to get me up. And then, you know, I was like, well, let's just do it, you know, under my breath. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
And we had these huge balloons up above that were oversized balloons, maybe 36 inches, clear, filled with confetti. And they were hanging up near the top of the shade structure. And Kenneth cracked a whip and broke them with the whip. So confetti rained down over the unicorn, caught in the web, the rainbow ropes. And so then once we got that, you know, the climax of it, then, you know, he took me down as quickly as he could. And I was frustrated. And I didn't understand, because it was only later that I understood that I was on a different kind of point, and it wasn't going to be the same. And that also the same time might not be the same on a different day. But I was like, you did something different. You never do that between dress rehearsal and opening night. You don't do something different. That's not fair. You know, and I was like mad, and I didn't want the aftercare.
And it's hard to be in that headspace too, also when you're performing. I mean, and James knows my body so well. He's my daddy, my dominant, my husband. And we were doing a rope bondage performance at a college, at Reed College in Portland, for their sex week.
That's awesome.
And we had all of these students there. They had been waiting for us. There was traffic or something, and we were a little bit late, and so I actually even forgot to stretch, because as soon as I got there, I was like, hello, I'm Madison Young.
Of course.
I'm so sorry that you've been waiting. And we just jumped right into it, and we had discussed the performance. We had everything worked out. However, there's also a lot of improv that happens. There's a lot of improvisation that happens.
Of course.
And a couple years ago, I fractured my finger in a bike accident, and James tied that finger. And I was like, you know, again, under the breath, like I'm like looking at him with like the eyes of death, you know, like trying to, you know, not have the audience see what's going on. And he thinks I'm just being cat and mouse with him. And I'm trying to communicate to him, no. I'm trying to safe word, but I can't really safe word in the middle of a performance. Just lay off the finger. Yeah, so, you know, things like that happen even when you've been performing for years and years together. It can be challenging.
Did it affect the aftercare that you wanted from him?
Yes, I needed to process a little bit of the emotional, like, why didn't you hear me?
Yes.
And get through that. And it's just challenging being in front of an audience again and performing.
Yeah.
And still wanting to show them the vulnerability and the connection. And trying to let that thing go, but also needing to advocate for your body.
Of course.
So, yeah, it can be tricky when you're doing very physical performance.
Most of the people after my unicorn performance, most of the people kind of faded away and went to another space, but there were still a few people around and people who wanted to chat, you know, and ask me how it felt, and some experienced rope people who wanted to say, like, hey, I saw you work through that. Good job, you know, especially for being so inexperienced. Good job. And I didn't really want to be touched by the person who tied me afterwards. He brought me water. I appreciated that. And then I just kind of sat on the floor of the terrace.
Yeah.
And there was the confetti. And I'm very much a tactile sensation person. And I self-soothe by stroking my arm and stroking my clavicle and my face, And I self-soothe by wearing jewelry of big tassels, things that I can touch so that I can stroke and feel, more relaxed. And so I was taking the confetti in big handfuls, and other people were doing it with me too, and just pouring it over my head and sprinkling it over my head. And that felt like very good self aftercare. Just like scooping it up and letting it come down, and moved very slowly. And then
that's such an important point, I think, is knowing our own self-care as well, and our own self aftercare, especially as someone who did so many bondage porn scenes. The directors are not there, and the rope artists are not there to give me aftercare. So it's really up to me. And even the best ones, I mean, there's just sometimes you'll have a check-in occasionally, but largely not. It's not, you're there as a model, not given aftercare. So
I wish that were a part of the work.
Yeah. So knowing what you need and creating your own, I would contact friends or lovers and tell them I'm going in for what's going to be a really intense scene. Can you maybe come over and just sit with me afterward? I might not be able to verbalize anything, but I feel like I just want to have someone present.
Like a comfort animal.
Yeah.
A comfort person.
Yeah.
I told my lover the other
not
day.
being alone, or sometimes you do want to be alone, but having someone even on call for that experience,
Yeah, I love that you set that up for yourself.
You have to. You have to just advocate for what you're going to need.
And sometimes you don't know, and you can say, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to need. It might be one of these things. It might be something else entirely. Are you up for offering that to me?
Exactly.
I was wondering about also the preparation, and I wondered if there was a way. So as an actor, I'd prepare for different roles in different ways. And if it was a period piece, it often involved putting on the corset, being cinched into the corset, rouging, the general dress and costumery that you have to do for the show was part of my ritual of preparing. And then I also might do some kind of breathing exercises, some kind of visualization. If I had to come in hot, if I had to come in with an emotion, then often I would do a substitution exercise where I would think of something and try to get something recent so that it was really, really fiery, that made me feel the same way that the character was feeling, and do the substitution.
Emotional memory recall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I wondered if there was a ritual or a series of rituals, or maybe even a buffet of rituals that you chose from as you were preparing to do a porn scene.
Yes, for me, well, getting your makeup and hair done, I feel like, is a really good transition space, because you're shutting out of your street clothes, like your clothes that you come to the porn house or the set or whatever in, and getting into a robe and going to see the makeup and hair person. And it's kind of that beginning of the transformation. But then I also like to stretch, whether it's for bondage or a lot more if it's for bondage, and do specific stretches that are going to help me in that scene. With rope, especially if I'm doing an intense day of rope scenes for a film, I'll be doing quite a bit of stretching for my thighs, my legs, my arms, my shoulders, my back, doing a lot of stretching, and then meditating. I like to do meditation and visualization. It's very helpful for me as well.
Do you have a time that you would usually do when you meditated before?
I usually do it in whatever the green room is, wherever the green room is set up it depends on when the makeup and hair is set up. So if I have a little while, often you show up to set and everyone's running late and you're sitting around for quite some time.
Sure.
And I
Hurry up and wait.
Exactly. And I try not to get too distracted with my phone and instead put that aside and let my mind start to rest and let go of the rest of my day and slip into this new space, this new role.
Did you find much of a difference between the way that you prepared for your solo show, Reveal All, Fear Nothing, and the way that you prepared for scenes on a set?
There are definitely some similar elements. I do like to meditate. I do like to do visualizations beforehand. I'll watch the whole performance in my mind. And I do that with films too, especially when I'm directing. I read once that David Lynch does that he lies down and watches his films. And I love David Lynch so much. So I've done that as well, and I really enjoy that, to just close your eyes and to see that very first shot and see the next shot. And I'll do that with readings. I do that with my performances. I do that with Reveal All, of closing my eyes and watching how I'm walking in, seeing the audience, seeing the introduction, and watching the whole thing. And then I feel confident that it's there, that it exists, and then I can just step right into it.
That is so interesting. I think I would do a kind of opposite or a counter visualization, in that I would replay the last performance and I would watch it and how I said what I said, how it might have been different from other performances, if I wanted to change that, if I wanted to shift it, in as much as it was premeditated, right? Some of it you want to be
organic. I mean, it's always going to be organic, and whether you're doing film or theater, there's going to be things that come up, and you open and you change and you shift and allow for that creativity to come in, because it's a conversation, right?
Oh, which is why I love live theater so much and miss it. The last thing I did was this immersive theater show called Empire Travel Agency with Woodshed Collective, where it was an experience for 4 audience members at a time.
Wow.
Because that's how many could fit in the car with one of the actors. And so they were shuttled around between all these different spaces. They arrived someplace, they were sort of kind of kidnapped in a way, or like taken along. They got in a car twice with 2 different actors. They got on the subway once. They went to all of these different sets around Lower Manhattan, and the experience that a lot of the audience members told me that they had was, is he in it? Are they in on it? And they would start making these connections to things in life that were just happening on the street that could be seen as theatrical,
right?
And not knowing, not being able to necessarily discern which being so sure that person was an actor, and then having somebody else come up and pick you up, and it wasn't them, but you were so sure that it was them, which I think is such a neat experience. And the liveliness in having different people come to you and being able to play with your script in such a way that you would go away from it, and then you would have to figure out, how am I going to maneuver back to it? How will I guide us back towards the words I know I'm supposed to say?
Right.
And yet still be playing with these people who are giving me something different than the people who came in before. And I had a one-on-one where I invited these people into my office. I was Piper Pilfer, who was an art dealer, and I was at this art gallery that was mine. And so I invited the audience members, as well as one actor, into my office and gave them a little scene, a little spiel, and then I would invite them out with a nice gesture, and I would put my hand on one of their shoulders and keep them back. And so everybody else left, and I was entrusting this person they were supposed to bid for me at a secret auction later. And so I entrusted them with this art piece that they were supposed to use to bid at this auction. And that person gave me each time a different response, right? Sometimes they were a little skeptical. I had a famous TV actress at one point, and she was kind of like, okay. and I had people who just were like, yeah, and they wanted to play and they wanted to banter. I had one guy who was really kind of offensive and gross, and it was interesting because his father-in-law insisted on staying. I was keeping the young one back, and his father-in-law insisted on staying with him, which at first kind of annoyed me because it's supposed to be a one-on-one. And then I was like, fine, I'll take two of you. And, sat them down and gave them the spiel. And it was kind of a leading line where I would say, and so, if you make this work out for me, or whatever the line was, ... And the young one said, you'll give us sexual favors. I get it. This episode was edited by Chad Michael Snavely. I'm lucky to have him on my team. You can find out who else got lucky with Chad by perusing his roster of podcasts on chadmichael.com. My intro music was created by pretty much the nicest rock star in the entire world and a brand new dad, Alan Markley. Plastic Cannons on Instagram. I hope to see him again someday. He lives in my neighborhood. My delectable character illustration and cover art was drawn by Shauna Shea, SHANA SHAY. Find her on 99 Designs. Hire these people if you can. Until Friday, dear ones, how lucky are you when the second half of my titillating conversation with Madison is released, and she performs the very first night of her limited engagement at the Tank. Here's a little invocation. May you have someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. It's been our pleasure to lie down for you. Got to see her show last week, and it was an emotional and stirring experience. And actually, she said right before intermission, go forth, buy merch, have blowjobs. And then I looked at my date, and he looked back at me. And then we ran upstairs, and he's like, I'm so glad you live here. And I gave him a 15-minute timed blowjob. He put the timer on 15 minutes, then didn't press it, but I had an idea of what 15-minute blowjob would be like. and so I was like, I think we should check, like we should sit you down and calm you down, and then we should check. And it was exactly, and we ran downstairs and slid into our seats just before the lights went up. Hot. It was so exciting. And then I bought merch afterwards.